The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to thank each of you today to the featured webinar. Today's topic is the 2017 Ultimate Playbook for Recruiting Top Financial Advisors. And I'd like to thank everybody again for your time. Let me advance the slides here real quick. I am David Testerman, managing partner and one of the co-founders of BrokerHunter. BrokerHunter has been around since 1999, so we've seen this industry change a lot, and I'll be touching upon that here shortly. But never before have we seen a recruiting environment like we're seeing right now, and it's definitely making this topic timely. We normally do an ultimate playbook around the first part of every year, as you see here on the theme. The football theme is pretty timely with the Super Bowl this week. In full disclosure, BrokerHunter is based out of Atlanta, Georgia, so we are a little biased in that respect this year. But before I get started on the webinar, let's do a couple of items here, kind of housekeeping, and then we'll jump right in. First of all, you can minimize to see the whole screen, the control panel. Each of you has one up right now. You can minimize that with the arrow up above. And also you'll see the ability for you to answer or ask questions, as well as send me chats as well. Questions is normally the best way to submit any inquiries you have. We're going to do our very best at the end of this session, at the end of the Q&A, to do a Q&A, excuse me, at the end of the webinar. Try to get to as many questions as you can. Normally what I like to do on webinars like this is I'm going to run through the material at a pretty decent pace, and then we certainly can go back and touch upon certain topics during the Q&A period. So anyhow, just start firing away questions as you have them, and we'll jump right in here to the webinar. So, again, keeping with the football Super Bowl theme here, why do you need to have a playbook? And before I jump in here, I'm going to ask everybody a quick poll question here, and we're going to let that dictate kind of which direction the playbook goes. So this is going to be a real time. So I'm showing you all a poll right now. First of all, is how many financial advisors are you looking to hire? And let's give a few minutes there for everybody to select that. And bear with me for a moment. This is going to dictate a lot of which direction we go here in the webinar. The principles that we're going to discuss here are timely across the board, whether you're at a branch level all the way up to enterprise, but certainly there's some nuances there. Looks like we have a pretty good mix here. Give it a couple more seconds here. If you have not voted yet, please do so. And we're going to go ahead and stop this poll here real quick. So bear with me for just a moment here. Okay, good. All right, that poll is closed. Very good. So it looks like most of you are on the call today are hiring between, well, the bulk of you between 1 and 50 financial advisors, and then a few of you are going to be looking for, looks like at the national level, well over 100. So great. We've got a couple of tips here throughout for all levels here, but we're going to jump in real quick is, basics, start from the beginning. Why do you need to have a playbook? Well, as many of you know, financial advisor recruiting and recruiting in general, but particularly advisors, is a very, very challenging environment. However, the upside, to being successful at that is particularly for advisors and wealth managers is tremendous. You look around your office, you see empty desks, or you have space to build out, or maybe perhaps you're replacing some attrition or a combination of all of the above. Empty desks in the brokerage business is really just a lost revenue opportunity. So all the way from a branch level, all the way on up, we know that empty desk is a bad thing, and we're going to do and try to give you some tips to fill those desks in the best and most efficient way possible. So we're going to do another quick poll here real quick as we're going here. I'm asking these at the beginning. What is the, let me launch this, what's the minimum gross production that you're looking for within your organization? And that'll also help dictate what we're looking for. Yeah, right, well, good. So we're getting a few answers here. And, you know, depending on what level of production you're looking at, certainly going to dictate which types of engagement techniques work for recruiting. One of the more obvious things that happens is that, you know, the higher up in gross production you're looking for, the audience or the potential pool of recruits is far, far smaller. So we're already in an industry that by its very nature is not very big. But then, you know, again, as you start going up in tenure, experience, and production assets, you know, it certainly limits that substantially. And we'll get into that a little more here in a moment. All right, well, very good. Thank you all so much for answering that. So it looks like right now the bulk of the audience here is looking somewhere between 100 to 500K. I know that's a pretty big range, but that's kind of the minimum right now. About 12% of you are looking over $500,000 in production. Certainly some firms on here are looking for no minimum requirements, and I'll touch on that in a moment. And a lot of you are looking at a 50 to 100 range. So bulk of you are looking for, which is kind of what we see with our clients, you know, kind of your 100K plus advisors, and that is the segment right now that seems to be very, very robust in recruiting. Okay, so we'll close that poll. Thank you all very much for answering that. All right, we're going to move to the next slide here real quick. Here is the biggest obstacles we see, and as the slide says here, to branch office recruiting. The audience here today looks like it's a pretty big mix, but I'm going to say this really affects everybody, both at a local and regional level. But we've got some pretty big obstacles here. One that I'll touch upon here in a moment is the shrinking industry headcount. This industry is getting smaller. The headcount is trending downwards. You know, the last box here, lack of training, that's something we've talked about the last couple of years. We're seeing a little bit of an increase in training new advisors, but it's not nearly sufficient to offset the demand that's out there for this talent. You know, that in turn creates fierce competition for the remaining reps that are there, that are licensed. You do have a technology shift going on, both in recruiting as well as just in the industry in general. You have you know, robo-advisors. You have a lot of technology coming down the pipe that allow a lot of the firms to be, you know, very similar in some respects in the technology platforms they offer to reps. So differentiation between firms from a candidate perspective is becoming very difficult. And then, you know, just in general, you have several different competing business models that are competing for both clients as well as how you recruit talent. And then an increased cost of recruiting. We don't see this abating probably forever. I don't see this industry all of a sudden getting a huge new influx of advisor talent that's going to decrease the cost of recruiting. I think we're going to see as some of these stats play out that we're going to see a continuing kind of a decrease in headcount here over the next 10 years. And that's going to increase your cost of recruiting this talent and the competition. So here's a couple quotes that I think are pretty good that pretty much summarize what I just had to say. And again, this is touching upon a lack of training in the industry. And then another looming thing that many of you are aware of is just the demographics of the industry. Average reps, I think just now over 55 years old now across the board. As you see here, many of them are retiring and not being replaced. So it's a shrinking pool of reps that we have. this might be a little bit depressing, but I think it's very good a lot of times to go ahead and let's see what we're up against before we formulate a plan on how we're going to attack this. Because I think a lot of times when you start out recruiting, you may not realize how small of a market we're truly after here. And then last but not least, or one of the couple numbers here is if you include the RIA advisors as well as FINRA reps, last count I saw, it's around 300 to 315,000 advisors, and that's in both channels. That's going to include your FINRA licensed 7-6 reps as well as your just 65, 66. Within the FINRA license universe, you know, of Series 7, Series 6, client-facing registered reps, right here you have a total universe of 635,000. I actually checked that yesterday to the FINRA site. It's actually 641. Looks like they bumped that up in the most recent, but not materially different from last year. But we have had, it's a little unclear to get an exact number here of what we would constitute a registered retail rep, you know, when you take out the compliance, the operation, people and management with licenses. You have a fairly small number of actual client interacting representatives. We're going to throw out a number here of 200K, just nice round number, and I think you know, it's a good starting point. So when you're looking nationally at a market of this size, you know, we're not dealing with a lot of people. So it makes the recruiting very, very important to be very, very targeted, very, very strategic, and you have to watch, you know, your cost all along the way in recruiting. However, we also have to recognize that we are recruiting revenue-producing talent, in many cases bringing over assets and production to your firm. So it's something that you certainly need to invest in, but, you know, again, being able to do so in an efficient, cost-effective manner is the key. So we're going to jump forward here, and you want to kind of consider these questions before we jump into the three main components of what we consider very important for branch recruiting. So we'll do one more poll here before we get started, and based on the attendees here, would you consider yourself a local office, regional, nationally recruiting? That dictates a lot on how you're going to go about sourcing candidates, and we'll let everybody kind of answer that real quick. Interesting. This looks like about a third, and a third. Very close. Actually, a little less on the local. Looks like about 27% of the callers on the webinar today are what I consider single location or branch. About 49% or 40%, excuse me, regional, and the rest being national. So, all right. Well, that's going to dictate a lot on how we go here. So, I'm going to go ahead and close this poll, and we're going to jump to the next. Now, right here, again, this is going to touch upon the cornerstones of branch recruiting. So I'm going to start real simple here, but very, very quickly move along. And if anybody here has some more in-depth questions about any of these, you know, I would be happy, you know, offline or afterwards to talk more about this with you and give you some ideas. But basically, three main things. You've got either referrals, networking, which kind of falls into referrals, but it's separate as well, and then you have advertising. And there's a bunch of different ways to do this, but some of these principles are pretty much the same. Somebody starting out at a branch level wanting to recruit, the absolute first thing we would tell you to do is to develop a referral program of some kind. You need to leverage the advisors you have to help you reach out to candidates and people they have worked with in the past. On a regional or national level, same principle. You're going to want to formalize it more. Many of you probably already have one, but you've got to get these advisors. You know, again, nobody's training people very much anymore, so everybody's worked somewhere else and they've worked around other advisors. This is hands down going to be one of the best ways for you to, you know, attract talent quickly. A lot of times you get the best hires. You already have a captive audience of recruiters working on your behalf, which is your reps, and something to absolutely do. If you're a single office and you're looking for 1 or 2 reps, and you maybe, let's say you have a few reps already in place, you more than likely can hit your headcount goal just doing this one thing. A couple things to help you organize this, though. Again, this is easier to do at a local level, but we'll say this. If you're in a small to middle-sized market, one of the easiest and quickest things you can do is just get a list of the financial advisors, and so you understand the target audience that even exists that you're going after. A lot of markets, we're talking, less than 500 advisors. Major markets, city, I think Atlanta I checked is 4,500, so it's getting bigger there certainly. But from a list like that, you can very, very quickly kind of vet out and remove firms that probably wouldn't fit with your business model and whittle a list down to a very, very small target. You want to get this list and go over it with the advisors in your office, have them give you insights on the reps, ask for introductions, just some basic referral techniques. And again, I'm going to move through this pretty quickly because I think most of you probably already know this. You do want to make the incentives worthwhile. I think, again, seeing what's on the table as far as potential, a Starbucks card, while nice, probably is not going to get them out there beating the bushes the way you want them to. So, keep it commensurate with what the talent you're looking for. And probably the most important thing, you can get fired up, you can go out, you can get the greatest referral plan in the world, you run through the reps, and then everybody forgets about it in 2 months. Consistency is key here. You don't have to beat on it every month, but certainly once a quarter, a couple times a year, you need to sit down and really, put this in front of your team again and make sure that everybody's keeping their ears to the ground out in the local market. So referrals, going to be the best hires you normally make. Next one is networking. I'm going to kind of go through this fairly quick. Many of you have already started as advisors or you're recruiters, so you know all about offline networking. It's great. You got to do it. It's a little tricky with advisors, though, is because they don't seem to all hang out together, and that's kind of been a theme throughout. I mean, there's some things you can do, locally, country clubs and, things where you might have advisors hang out. But again, it's hard to get them to a meeting. There are conferences, but, again, recruiting at those, because it's usually somebody's conference, is probably not a good idea. So it's a little bit of a hard group to naturally network with. But, again, it certainly can be done. We have seen online networking work to some degree. We're big advocates of LinkedIn. I think a few years ago it was the hottest recruiting item out there. I don't know if it's lived up to that billing, although it is a powerful way to, in a business setting, reach out and link in with candidates that are potential targets. Not everybody on earth's on LinkedIn, but a lot are. And it's something you can take the list that you have purchased before, utilize it, link in with some. As many of you know, if you're already on LinkedIn, it's very busy. There's a lot of emails flying around. So, your message can get a little lost sometimes, but a little bit of that goes a long way. Certainly you can send some emails and some other items like that. We use it, and it's very powerful for this, is you can build LinkedIn groups. BrokerHunter has a LinkedIn group, and we kind of got started on this when it was new, but we've got about 120,000 financial professionals across the board. Not all of them are FINRA licensed, a lot of insurance people and others as well, but a lot of licensed candidates. So it's a very powerful tool in that respect, as you can get an audience and drive them to a particular event or something of topical interest to them. And I think that's the important thing in any of this is you want to avoid just we call basically spamming, and that's whether you're emailing, LinkedIn, or anything. You can do a little bit of it, but you can only go back to somebody so many times and say, hey, are you looking to make a move? At some point you need to take the conversation or the relationship to another level. And that's where informational or content marketing comes in, and I'll touch upon that. Tip number 3, this is going to be hard for a branch to pull off, but it's very easy and simple for a regional or national firm to pull off, and that's host an informational webinar. We do a lot of these for clients. I'd certainly love to talk with anybody that has an interest about doing this, but they can be something as simple as literally a recruiting webinar about your opportunities, or you can do something that's of topical interest. Right now, something that would be of topical interest would be the DOL rule, maybe or maybe not coming out. I guess nobody knows right now, but that's a hot topic right now, and it's one that has potential huge disruptive nature to the industry. So, you know, something that addresses a topical item that your prospective prospects or prospective advisors would be interested in is a great way to kind of break the ice. You know, the great thing about that is, you know, in exchange for you giving them some good content and topical information, you know, they usually give you a Gmail or a personal email address, contact information, and all of that. That's what we're really trying to establish here. And as we go into the advertising component, you'll see why it's so important from a pipelining perspective to start doing these types of items, because long term that's going to pay huge dividends. Building some familiarity and some brand awareness is huge, and some subject matter expertise is huge as well. And the great thing about now is that's some pretty powerful currency, especially with social media and everything. LinkedIn's a good one. Unfortunately, Facebook, Instagram, some of these other ones that may work for a different industry or different demographic groups don't seem to have really caught on here. I guess maybe a little bit of a Facebook would work to some degree, but we've focused, at least here and most of our clients, kind of on the LinkedIn channel. Again, LinkedIn's been around a while now, but it certainly can be a valuable tool in your efforts. Now, a lot of those items there are pretty basic things that many of you probably already do. The thing that we always felt like, and where our expertise lies, is really on the advertising side of the house. And I'm going to go real quick here, this slide, and talk a little bit about why recruitment marketing, online marketing, and everything is so powerful. Everybody here's bought stuff online now. When we first started showing this slide, it was, you know, it was fairly new. But Google coined this phrase called the zero moment of truth actually a long time ago, and it was when the buying behavior started to change due to the advent of the internet. And what it did is it short-circuited the buying cycle for a purchaser. You know, before, people used to, if they wanted to find out information about somebody, they had to call, they had to, you know, call in, they had to go to your store. There was a lot of things they had to do in order to get the information. Now everything is online. And so what happens is purchasers, and we're going to jump to recruiting here in a minute, they make almost their entire mind, or a vast portion of it, up before you ever even know they're looking into you or your opportunity. So if you're not found online, or you're found unfavorably, it's very detrimental to you. I would say not being online is probably more detrimental than even you know, some negative information, because in a candidate's mind, you know, when they're doing research and trying to find information, you know, you just literally don't exist. And most people have a fairly short list of employers that when they decide to start making a move, they're gonna run through, you know, 4 or 5 very quickly, and that's going to make the short list. And so you've got to make that short list. We have down here that applies exactly to recruitment advertising as well. Changing jobs or changing careers or moving firms is the ultimate buying decision. There's a ton at stake. I would go as far to say in a lot of cases it's probably more important to somebody than purchasing a house. So to not put that level of thought in and to put the resources into advertising your opportunities is missing a huge part of, you know, your potential that's out there. So candidates, you know, they're going to do all this research on you. They're going to do a lot of different things to find out as much as they can about you, and it has to be really easy for them to get in touch with you in order for you to get to that next step, which is a direct contact in the first meeting. You know, once you get to that point, you know, you got them from there, and you take them down through your pipeline. So here's another interesting slide here is, you know, we not only try to hit the real active candidates, but we also want to directly or indirectly reach the other 90% that's out there. You know, in a universe that we're talking about, literally a couple 100,000, maybe 300,000, if we're looking at RIA candidates as well, it's a small group. So, you know, you don't want to only market to your most active candidates. You need to have a mechanism in place so real active candidates can very easily be in touch with you, and you want to entice them to do that. But you also want to message to that passive group, because at some point they move into that active group on down the road. A lot of different ways you can do it. The most simple way, and for the branch offices out here, it's going to be a simple job posting. You know, in a number of places. We've heard people, a pretty good rule of thumb is you pick a niche site, a local site, and a general site. That's kind of been marketing, or at least online recruitment marketing 101 for a long time. I'd say that's probably pretty accurate, because the most important thing is generating enough lead flow in order for you to hit your head count goals. So if you all, and as we go back to that other slide, we're talking most of you kind of fell within, let's say, 100 rep category. I think it was 50 to 100. You're going to have to generate probably 10 times the lead flow in order to get that level of candidates. So, you know, if you're looking for 100, we're going to have to bank on that. You're going to have to probably pipeline, you know, 1,000 candidates and keep that pipeline at that level in order for you to be able to, you know, generate adequate hiring coming out the back end of the funnel. Everybody's number is a little bit different, and that's okay. But, you know, we can talk individually about that. But, you know, whatever your number is, your kind of your batting average, you know, you can back into that number and what you need to do headcount-wise. So tip number one, if you're not online advertising somewhere, try it. You may not get it right the first time. There's a whole bunch of sources out there. I'll kind of go over a couple of them here. But you definitely want to have a presence outside of your own site. Candidates want really easy. They want to be able to research and find information about you really quick. And you do not want to rely on somebody coming in, you know, either to your career site or, you know, just finding you online. While it's important to have those things, you do need to have some kind of a pull campaign pulling them back in. Next tip here is financial advisors behave completely differently than any other candidates we've seen, either in this industry or across the board. It's probably, you know, I don't know another example that would be as you know, difficult to recruit, but Peter Weddle, who is the TA talent guru and has the big organization kind of governing talent acquisition talent, was very intrigued by our industry, because he said you kind of have that ultimate passive candidate situation, you know, even the ones that are active. And it is kind of true. There's hardly any, and if you're looking for production, there are no unemployed candidates. So, you know, you don't need to tell them what a job description that a financial advisor does and all of that. What you're trying to do with a job posting, and we call it that, it's slang, it's a, you know, it's an opportunity posting, I guess would be a better way to say it. But you're trying to really quickly give your unique selling proposition for the sole purpose of getting that candidate to want to find out more. You don't have to tell them everything. You don't need to get into compensation. You don't need to do a lot of things, and you certainly don't need to tell them what financial advisors do. But what you do need to do is you need to give them the opportunity to want to find out more and to talk to you. And the triggering mechanism for us at BrokerHunter has always been just the, hey, I'm interested, apply, you know, send your information, let's get the conversation going. That is ultimately what you're trying to do. So, you know, that's where we get unique selling propositions. The other big hurdle in recruiting, and unfortunately I think for some of you on the call today, if you are recruiting regionally or nationally, and we certainly understand that you have to use something called an applicant tracking system. For those of you that aren't familiar with that term, what it is it's instead of applying through a site like BrokerHunter or directly, it goes back to a career site and you go through an application process online. We've done numerous studies over the years on this and have had a lot of clients share data with us, and the abandonment rate when you send an advisor to an applicant tracking system is it's tremendous. It's unfortunately sometimes you have to do that, but if you can avoid it, ways to engage with a candidate without sending them through this would be big. And then last but not least, never stop advertising. This might be the biggest one you can do. If you are hiring, you need to be advertising somewhere, multiple places, a lot of different places. Couple things you want to consider is, ultimately you want to back everything into a cost per hire. Every firm and every individual on this call today, I promise you, has a different cost per hire metric that works. If if you're an independent broker-dealer, you've got narrower margins, your cost per hire needs to be less for a comparable candidate. If you're in a more of a traditional broker-dealer, your cost per hire can be far higher. That's an important number to have. However, that's a very lagging indicator. So cost per application or cost per lead is a metric that we really like, and that's a number that we really like to drive. Now, if you're buying traditional job postings in media or banners or any of these things, typically you're paying up front for these items, and then your cost per lead and cost per hire has to lag. The challenge with this is it becomes a chicken or an egg item, is that without advertising, you don't get lead flow or hires, but you have to outlay a lot of capital, especially if you're talking about advertising regionally or nationally. I did want to touch upon, before we go to Q&A, about a new program that BrokerHunter can help you with in this one respect from advertising, is we have a program that really is one of a kind in any recruiting. But we have a cost per application program. And in this industry, it's very easy for us to administer this, as we are able to filter candidates on FINRA licenses. You only pay 4 licensed candidates, and we're able to drive a very compelling cost per lead metric for you to ultimately drive a very compelling cost per hire metric for you. The great thing about this is we don't actually charge for the ads, and there's no setup fees. You're only charged for actual performance. And that's a pretty unique value proposition that's unlike any out there. Many of you may have used like Indeed or something where it's a cost per a pay-per-click model. This takes it, kind of leaps and bounds ahead of that, where we're doing, cost per application, and we've actually made it specific for this industry. It works exceptionally well if you're recruiting advisors and RIA candidates. Reason we did this is because what we saw in the past is when you're paying for advertising on a time basis, a lot of times you get timed out just before it worked. Again, we're in a small market. It's really candidate driven. So let's hypothetically, if you're looking for advisors in Atlanta, in any 30-day snapshot, if you go out there and advertise and then maybe you didn't get anybody and you stopped, you're missing that time when you're not out there advertising. But we understand that, because it's very expensive to keep doing something that doesn't work. This kind of leapfrogs that entirely, and again, it gives clients the opportunity to be listed somewhere, give yourself a chance to get these applicants, and the most important thing, to let you keep advertising as long as you have a need. So that's something here. Our email's at the bottom, telephone number's at the bottom, and I will be sending everybody out a follow-up email with a recording here of this presentation, but also with a link where if you'd like to schedule a call, we can talk about your unique situation a little further and see if this would make sense for you. We'd love to do that. All right, and now I'm going to ask one more poll here before we get into the Q&A, and this is, I think, probably the most important question we have. Now, I want to preface this by at the very beginning, where BrokerHunter is located, but who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl? Good answers on Sunday. Now, all right, so let's get everybody voting here. Now, I haven't said what we're going to do if you vote for the Patriots, but no, I actually don't blame you for voting for the Patriots, but we have to be hopeful here. Very good. Well, by a 2-to-1 margin, our audience is saying the Atlanta Falcons are going to beat the Patriots, and I think that may be more of an indictment of the Patriots maybe not being as popular as their actual skill level, because I think that they're probably going to win. I hate to say that. We're a huge Falcons fan. But anyhow, we're hopeful and we're excited about Sunday, and looking forward to the game. So anyhow, we do the Ultimate Playbook every year right around the Super Bowl. We feel like that's a pretty good tie-in for this. So appreciate everybody voting there. And again, we won't hold it against you if you vote for the Patriots. That's probably prudent. So I'm going to close out the poll here, and we're going to go to the Q&A right now, and let's get some questions from the audience here. If there's anything in particular we want to talk a little bit. Okay, let's see here. Okay. Bear with me here. All right, somebody says, under the AppPad program, can I run ads nationally? If so, how long will they run for? Under the program I just discussed, you can run ads nationally at no charge, no setup. You only pay for the actual applications of candidates you receive. They'll run as long until you can do applications on a one-off basis. So you can, it's $195 per successful FINRA licensed applicant. You can do it that way, and we also have packages available you know, where you can get the cost per application down a little bit. So they run as long as you'd like or until your package is fulfilled. No long-term contracts or anything. Again, we've designed this particular program due to the nature of difficulty in recruiting in this market to make sure you know, our clients are able to stay on in the best possible light, you know, to generate leads for you. And it really does, you know, take, you know, advertising nationally and throwing a really wide net a lot of times to get that. And again, as you probably have seen already, you know, there's a lot of timing factors here. Obviously, you know, April is when the DOL rule is supposed to start going into effect. I think that's a little bit up in the air now, or I think as of right now it's going into effect or starting to, but certainly I guess nobody knows. In spite of that, though, the recruiting market is naturally going to get more competitive just with the attrition in the industry. I think there's external factors that if they become implemented, like the DOL and fiduciary rules, that, you know, it may, you know, magnify that considerably. We saw a pretty big flurry of activity here kind of towards the end of last year. A lot more offices starting to look around. You know, there's certainly some broker-dealers whose cost of compliance is going to go up substantially. I think some of the broker-dealers on the margin there, if you're real high payout and perhaps aren't, you know, as well positioned for the DOL ruling, you know, it can, you know, cause a liquidation, honestly, or, you know, a merger acquisition, something along those lines. A lot of reps are starting to look around in anticipation of that, so there's certainly a good time to be recruiting. It is looking like it's going to be one of the biggest disruptive events if it's implemented as they had stated, which from a recruiting standpoint, if you are well positioned, is a great opportunity. Disruption has a positive flip side in that it gets candidates moving that normally wouldn't have, or hastens them along, and it really doesn't necessarily have to be all that difficult. I think, you know, with some proper positioning and, you know, again, some strategic advertising and some of these other programs, you can get a very good lion's share of candidates that way. One other item is, even though we're talking about a very small group of candidates here, there's only, I think there's 150 people on the call, registered for the call. It looks like we have just over 100. What we've seen in recruiting is, while everybody says they're recruiting, the reality is a far fewer amount will actually do anything about it, and then even a smaller amount will actually do what we consider even some bare minimum kind of effective things. So while you technically are competing with the rest of the industry for this talent, the reality is that you're probably not, you know, competing with everybody, you know, and you can certainly do a few strategic things here and get a lot of traction if you just, you know, have a plan. And I think that's, you know, where it starts. Let's see here. What other questions does folks have? Do you specify? Can you specify a minimum GDC in this program? We can talk with you a little bit about that on the application program. That's something that's probably best handled separately. It depends on the minimum and if you're national or not. We try to keep the cost per leads very, very low here, and we can figure out, based on traffic and our history, what it costs to deliver a licensed lead without charging recruiting fees or really escalating the cost. when you start restricting on production, the model breaks down. I will say this, if you're looking for, and again, this is just kind of statistics, but and it's probably even harder than this, but the statistics will play out that, if there's 200,000 reps that are just licensed, the top 10% would be 20,000 of them. At that level, we're talking 500,000 or more in production. It's going to be more expensive to attract those candidates, obviously. I think in a lot of cases what we've seen, it just takes more, time and advertising and leads, and, every 10th lead or 8th lead or whatever the number is for you, will a lot of times be a bigger producer. I mean, we've seen, again, we're playing with law of large numbers here, but, clients on this program that, you get a couple brand new licensed candidates and the next one's an $800,000 producer. So what we always try to tell everybody in a program like this is it's a way to start backing into a metrics, but ultimately the metric that you have to be able to back into, and this is for anybody, is that cost per hire, because if you never get any hires, it all breaks down. And so this just is a little more palatable way to do that. Besides, here's another question that's good. Besides LinkedIn, are there any other social media sites that you would recommend using? Not really. I guess what I always looked at is, this is a B2B conversation. When you're soliciting somebody, it's a career-related, work-related, and you have to look at somebody's frame of mind when they're on another medium. LinkedIn's very business-oriented, so to solicit somebody from, to a business opportunities based on the site you're on, that's a logical, that's a good use. If you're on Facebook and stuff, I mean, you certainly could do it, but most people are using Facebook for social reasons for the most part, or, a lot of retail shops use it to advertise, and it's very good for that. But it seems like for just this industry and the audience and the demographics, it falls way short. So really, as far as we've found, is LinkedIn is hands down of the social platforms is where it seems like the advisors tend to congregate online. Everywhere else, it's just a little bit here and there. And then again, Instagram, Snapchat, there's, my 15-year-old high school son has to fill me in on all of these. Apparently, Instagram's old news now too, and I just discovered it. So, again, it's all going to depend on your audience. So, you just have to, experiment around with a few. I think keeping cost in mind. I don't think there's probably any sites out there that materially will be able to yield the same results that LinkedIn does, if that makes sense. Again, LinkedIn's a little crowded though now. I think 5, 6, 7 years ago, we started playing around with it, and it was growing real rapidly, and I think it hadn't been discovered yet from a recruiting standpoint. Also, LinkedIn more than likely is going to get more and more expensive as they continue to try to, leverage, revenue there. It's kind of become a recruiting company in some respects, and I know many of you probably use the LinkedIn Recruiter and all of that as well. So, again, it's got some great technology, and there's certainly some value there. But we always advocate you really want to try a bunch of different things in recruiting and not box into necessarily one, and let the ROI dictate. And your metrics and ROI is going to change even maybe over the course of a year between different mediums as well. I mean, sometimes for whatever reason, one will pull ahead, and then the other will catch up. So as far as social platforms though go, LinkedIn to me is the one. I feel like if you're going to invest some time in, would be the one to do. If anybody else knows of any out here, chat them to me. But I think that's going to be it. Football. Does Julio Jones still have turf toe? This is pretty funny. Good question. I have no idea. I think he's going to be well though for this weekend. That's what they're saying. So, what if any unique selling propositions stand out as being the most effective in enticing FAs to make a change? Hopefully not just the money. The money's certainly a good one. I think all things being equal though, okay, and I say that tongue-in-cheek, Here's an example. I think if somebody, let's say, is in a wirehouse environment and they're moving to another wirehouse environment and that's what they're motivated by, you're not going to compete with that if you're not offering that. However, when all things are equal, if money's similar and all of that, I think culture's probably the biggest thing. Honestly, I think, and many of you probably would agree that from a technology standpoint, I don't know that for basic kind of day in, day out wealth management business, that there's a huge difference probably anymore between firms. I think when you start getting into maybe real high net worth clientele, there's certainly some aspects there. You get into family office type environment, wealth management, some real more complicated items like that. But I think you're kind of plain vanilla wealth management types of business, very similar. A lot of them clear off of the same platforms, you know, and they're all somewhat similar. That's kind of the curse of technology in some respects, is it does homogenize things a lot, where, you know, a rep at a very small independent broker-dealer a lot of times has as good, if not better, technology working in other houses as somebody perhaps in an office, provided they're doing fairly standard business. Culture's the big one. You know, ultimately you have to go work with somebody every day or with a group of people every day. If branch managers that are on the call right now, you're going to be the greatest selling point for your office. Again, all things being equal, the person coming to work from you, if they like you better than somebody offering the same basic value proposition, you're going to have them come work for you, or, you know, vice versa. If there's just not a connection there, you don't feel like it, you know, that's hard to overcome. However, we need to get to that point first. If you're not generating that level of engagement with candidates and getting those at-bats, you know, it doesn't matter, you know, how great or magnanimous or great your office is and the culture, that if you're not getting enough swings at the plate, you're just not going to drive the numbers you need to drive. But I do still think that ultimately this is a people business still. You need to be able to connect with people. What we try to help our clients do is we want to increase the velocity of people that you are connecting to, and to do it in an efficient manner. I think that you know, getting through and trying to target your demographics the big. Is the DOL rule affecting recruiting? Yeah, and it will continue to do so, especially if it gets implemented like we think. I think everybody right now is just kind of waiting around to see, though. I don't think anybody knows what's going on there. All right, here's a good one. Okay, what would your response be to the belief that those advisors marketing themselves are not as attractive as ones that professional recruiters are knocking their doors down? I think that's a great question, actually, because I think in the past there was a perception that, and I'm going to say particularly for advisors, let's say $500,000 or more in production, okay? Million in production. That small group of people that are just absolutely getting harassed by recruiters daily. Everybody wants them to work for them, everything. The problem is when you're relying, though, on the techniques of, you know, we're going to go out and get them on my terms, I'm going to call them, we're going to do it as you're doing it on your terms. The world doesn't work like that anymore on a buying thing. It's going to be when that person's ready to talk to you. They want information about you when they want to get it, confidentially. They may or may not even want to talk to anybody. They may never want to talk to somebody until they're at the very end. And so I think if you're only using a strategy of let's go out and get them, you're ignoring basic kind of proven online buying techniques, is that you still need to have ways to attract and develop a relationship with candidates. Again, this is a relationship business, you know, that's non-threatening, that provides value to them. They know everybody's chasing them around. But, you know, I think there's a little bit of truth to that. At some level, I think that, you know, there are just not very many of them. I mean, I think somebody came to me and said, we only want, you know, $10 million producers. I'm like, okay, I mean, I don't even know how many there are, 2. I mean, you know, it's just, you become statistically small that, you know, everything doesn't work. But for your day in, day out rep, when they want to start looking around and researching items, you know, firms that are out there for their business and grow, they're going to want to be able to reach out and engage with you when they're ready. A lot of people don't want to do it at work. They're maybe doing it on the weekend, at night, whatever. It's just the way internet has changed the behavior of candidates. Unfortunately, they don't behave the way we want them to sometimes. And so this is where these other techniques. Now, if you're targeting that level of advisor or whatever it is, you really want to hone in, though, and be realistic, is that, you're talking about a very small number of them. And techniques that work for the masses, when you get down to talking, several hundred types of, candidates, it's just, it's probably not going to work because you're just statistically not driving the numbers to make it work, and that's when you have to kind of go above and beyond. But there's certainly techniques you can do. I mean, that's where your higher end, webinars, content-driven pieces, developing a relationship with them over a long period of time works better. However, if you are looking in that kind of that bulge bracket of producers, let's call it, your 100 to 250K, there are enough large numbers there that you can influence it with some very basic items, and then if your pipeline still needs to be full, there's some other things you can do. The challenge you have is everything gets escalating cost. So, the cost to acquire an active candidate is going to be far less than somebody that's a little more passive. And so, your expenses escalate. Just like, you can get candidates, referrals technically are free. Not really, but let's call them free. You being able to network the candidates, that's just your time. But, and then, job postings will be kind of the next level up. So I think it really just depends on your particular firm, your audience, and how big your market is as to what's the best way to approach them. But no matter what level you're looking at, those three cornerstones absolutely work for everybody. It's just a matter of how much you're willing to spend, and how you advertise and do these other techniques is going to make the difference. Let's see what else. Okay, and let's get some other questions here. When you recommend advertising, what are some sources you recommend, and are you suggesting paid placement of our message like a traditional ad, or do you mean more like postings of advantage-based selling messages on our own platforms, from website to social media to email? Yes. All of the above are actually good. Your own platform, if you've built a talent community, awesome. Yes, you want to definitely message to those. You've spent a lot of money, whether you directly have a calculator or not, to acquire that audience. So you definitely want to do that. Email campaigns, yes. Email's a tricky one, though, in that you really have to gather emails yourself, or you have to use a you have to purchase, not a list, but a service that will allow you to email. We do some emailing for clients as well. The tricks with email marketing, well, there's several. One, you can't send to somebody's work ever. They also, if you do get personal emails, Yahoo, Gmail, and all of that, you actually have to get them opt-in, because if you don't, and you quote-unquote were able to buy this list, it takes one or two in a list to tell you that you're spamming, and it can literally shut you down. And, it's something that, email marketing is very, very challenging. It's deadly effective if you can do it right. But again, you got to be careful with it, and there's some ways to do it that certainly are kind of best practices. But, again, we're in a small market, so you don't need to get a huge list. You need a very targeted list of people, and that's one that you can best develop on your own with some very basic techniques. And I could talk with you online certainly about some ideas there, but content giveaway with landing pages and stuff like that, where you can gather information over time, is awesome, and your open rates are huge if you'll target your message. But again, it's got to be topical and something they're interested in. But I am not a proponent of any, we'll say this, and we have a vested interest in saying you need to advertise on a job board. I'm saying you need to advertise a lot of different places and drive the numbers, because I think with a lot of the hiring goals and the nature of this market, that you're probably going to have to do a lot of different things in order to drive enough sourcing to move the dial in a lot of cases. So a little bit of everything's big, and then optimize your cost based on some metric that, usually cost per lead, cost per qualified lead, and ultimately a cost per hire. But once you've determined that, the advantage of that is this, is you can now spend and drive engagement with candidates as long as you're watching those numbers very closely, and do that to a level to where you start getting diminishing results. If you do a webinar and you're able to generate webinar traffic at, let's say, $250 a qualified lead for your organization, and it's backing into compelling hires, well, then you keep doing webinars until it slows down. All of these mediums are like that. So let's see if there's any other questions here. I think that is really about it, and we're kind of coming up on the hour here. What I would like to do here is this, is we're going to send each of you out an email here at the end. It's going to have a link to the recording, and it's also going to have a link to my calendar and Jeff's calendar here, so you can certainly schedule a time to talk with us about the App Pack program, or really any of the initiatives, or we'd love to talk to you, kick around some ideas with you. We've done this for a long time and have tried everything and have seen clients try everything, and some successful, some not so successful, and at least would like to give you another opinion on some of the initiatives you might have planned. But kind of a takeaway here is, kind of when in doubt, especially if you're starting new, start by keeping it really simple and, measure, and make sure that you're trying a bunch of different things, but you're keeping your cost in line with your own individual metrics there. And that is all I have for today. I'd like to thank everybody. I've taken up too much of your time already, but again, would love to talk with you individually if you do have some time and would like to do so. So keep an eye out for the email going out. And again, we wish everybody a great rest of the week, and make sure to root for the Falcons on Sunday for us. Thanks so much, and have a great rest of the week. Goodbye.